Hi everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Credit Greedy for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Credit Greedy for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. So last week we started reading chapter 10 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, and this chapter is Blessed are the Merciful. So we're talking about how blessed are those who forgive each other, right? And are merciful towards other people, because we're not perfect and we all make mistakes. So how come we don't forgive other people but we want to be forgiven, right? When we make a mistake, we want people to forgive us, we want God to forgive us, but we don't forgive when other people make a mistake towards us. So we were talking about that, and we left up on the section, the speck and the beam in the eye. Why do you look at the speck of dust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the beam in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a beam in your own eye? You hypocrites, first take the beam out of your own eye. Then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your own brother's eye. Matthew 7, section 3-5. So here this was a quote from Jesus, right? That's in the Bible, written by Matthew. And we see, right, that Jesus is saying, okay, you are looking at the tiny flaws in other people, right? And we all do this, right? And that's why this is important to study, because still today, right, all this time after Jesus came, we're still doing these same things, right? Clearly we haven't learned completely for them, or even if we know them, we haven't been putting them into practice, because when we see other people, we judge them, right? We judge them and we look at the little speck in their eye. We look at that one piece of hair that's not in place. But what about the huge beam that's going in our eye? We don't even realize that, right? We don't really even realize all the flaws and mistakes we have, but we point out every tiny mistake that the other person makes. And Jesus is saying here, right, like, you're being a hypocrite. Like, you're looking at these mistakes in other people as if you're perfect, but you're not. You have even bigger mistakes and bigger flaws than those people do. So first, fix your flaws, right? Take that huge beam out of your eye, and then when you're perfect, then you can help someone else get rid of that little speck in their eye, right? But we're not. We need to fix ourselves before we can help other people. And then the spirits elaborate on this, and they say, one of the follies of humanity consists of seeing wrongdoing and evil in others before seeing it in ourselves. In order to be able to judge ourselves, it is first necessary that we see ourselves immediately reflected as a mirror. To be permitted, as it were, to look at oneself from the outside, as if we were someone else, so that we can ask ourselves, what would we think if we saw someone doing what we do? Beyond all doubt, pride is what induces us to disguise all of our moral and physical faults, even from ourselves. Such folly is essential against charity, seeing that true charity is always modest, unadorned, and indulgent. Prideful charity is a contradiction, as these two sentiments neutralize one another. With effect, how can someone who is sufficiently conceited as to believe in the importance of their own personality and the supreme of their own qualities possess abnegation all at the same time? That is to say, sufficient abnegation so as to be able to cause the goodness in others to stand out, knowing that this would ellipse them, instead of extolling the evil that only casts false glory upon them. Pride, being the father of many vices, is also the negation of many virtues. It is found to be the motive and base for almost all human actions. It was because pride is the principal obstacle to progress that Jesus tried so hard to combat it. So we understand here, right, what we were discussing before, how it's our pride, right? And we don't want to we're too proud to look at our own mistakes or define our own mistakes, or we want to ignore our own mistakes. But we're so quick to judge everyone else, right? We're so quick to look at everyone else's. But it's almost as if we're not looking at someone else's flaw to try and help them. But sometimes we're looking at someone else's flaw to point out their flaw so that we're better than them, right? So that we have this pride, oh, I don't do this, but you do that, right? And it's one thing to help your friend, right? Let's say they're going through a tough time and yeah, they do have a speck in their eye. They do have a flaw. They have something they're going through, but they need help, and you try and help them genuinely, right? But there's a difference, right? Like they're saying, prideful charity. When you're just doing it to, one, be like, oh yeah, look, I helped that person. Or two, make that person, like, show that you're better than that person. So those, like they say here, they neutralize each other, having prideful charity. But when we have selfless charity, right, when we're doing it for the good of others and not thinking about ourselves, even if we're not seeing our mistakes, which we should always be thinking of the best of other people when we're helping them. Or if we are to point out a flaw, maybe it's to help them in a situation. But again, we have to be able to fix ourselves and have to be able to point out our flaws and fix those before we tell other people about their flaws and how they should fix them. And many people know about this this little story, right, that Jesus said, this little part that you see the speck in someone else's eye but not the beam in your own eye, right? It's a very well-known phrase, but we don't put it into practice, and that's why it's still an issue today. So that's why it's important for us to not only just read this book, but try and put it into practice little by little, right? Take what we read today and put it in our daily routine throughout the week, and hopefully it'll become natural and we'll start doing that more often. So now we're on to the next section, which is titled, Do Not Judge Others If You Do Not Wish to Be Judged in Return. He that is without sin, let him be the first to cast a stone. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, so will it be measured to you. So, right, we're so quick to judge other people, but what about ourselves, right? If we're judging other people, people are going to come back and judge us, right? And in the same way, right, if we're judging someone like that, someone else is going to be judging us like that. Someone else is going to be saying those rude things that we're saying about someone else to us. And we don't want that, right? So we have to make that, have that self-awareness to stop ourselves from being harsh, from judging these people, right? Because what about us? What mistakes do we have that someone else is also can easily judge us for, right? Then it continues. The scribes and the Pharisees brought in to Jesus a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and then said to Jesus, Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write in the sand with his finger, as if he had not heard them. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, If any of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this moment, those who had heard began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Women, where are your accusers? No one has condemned you? No one, Lord, she replied. Then neither do I condemn you, declared Jesus. Go now and sin no more. So, and that's from John 8:3-11 in the Bible, right? So this is also, right, a very common story that a lot of us are aware of, but it's important, right? Because that's what we're learning here. And again, we still don't do that, right? We still judge people even though we have our own flaws. And so what this story is saying, so this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Maybe it was an affair or something of that sort. And they were going to throw stones at her, right? That was going to be her punishment. And when they brought her to Jesus, he said, okay, if you've never sinned, if you've never made a mistake, then go ahead, throw a stone. Because we've all made mistakes, right? And we're so easy to want to throw these stones at this lady that made this mistake. But what about us? We've made mistakes and no one threw stones at us. So why are we going to throw stones at other people? Or do we want people to throw stones at us because of our mistakes that we made? And they describe how people started leaving, right? One by one they started leaving, and the older people started leaving first because, right, the older people, as we commonly think, right, are wiser and they've gone through more and they understand, okay, I've made a lot of mistakes. And the younger ones, while they were still there, still being so prideful, right, so being so full of themselves, eventually realized, yeah, I've made mistakes too, right? We've all made mistakes because we're on earth, we're not perfect. So, again, we can't be so quick to throw stones at someone else when we have our own mistakes and our own problems going on. Then it continues. With the sentence, if any of you are without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. Jesus makes indulgence the first duty towards others, because there is no one who does not need it for themselves. He also teaches that we must never judge others with more severity than we would wish to be judged, nor condemned in others that which we condone in ourselves. Before chastening someone for a fault, let us see if that same censor could be applied to us. And of course we know that there are we all make mistakes, right? And some are worse than others, and they do need to have a repercussion, right? Maybe it's a punishment, something so that we learn from that. But that doesn't mean it had to be that cruel situation, right? Of everyone throwing stones. Because do we want people to throw stones at us, right? That's exactly what we're saying. Let's think. Do we want that to happen to us? No. So why are we going to commit that punishment towards that other person, right? Because that could have easily been us, because we know we're not perfect. Reproach may be launched against a person for two reasons: to suppress evil or to discredit the person whose acts are criticized. In this last intention, there is absolutely no excuse, because their existence is only malice and slander. The first may be because the first may laudable and even become a duty in certain cases, as good may come of it. Without it, the evil in society would never be restrained. Furthermore, it is not the duty of all mankind to help every fellow creature towards progress. Therefore, it is important that the principle, do not judge others if you do not wish to be judged, should be taken literally, as this could be destructive, whereas the spirit of these words give life to the concept. So here, right, again, they're saying that there's almost two reasons, right? Some people, okay, this person has to be punished because they have to learn, right? Because there's many criminals, right, and people that make really serious mistakes, really big mistakes, and they need to be suppressed, right? There's, like they're saying here, discredited. They need to be, let's say, punished, right? So they learn from their mistakes, and we can't just let all the criminals go if they're not going to learn from their mistakes, right? If they're just going to keep doing it. So in that case, okay. But in the other case, it's only malice and slander, only to be mean, only to be cruel. And even people who are in, let's say, jail systems, they do not have to be treated horribly, right? They do not have to have stones thrown at them. So here they're saying, right, there's that difference. Like, okay, yeah, like they're saying here, it even becomes a duty, because you can't let, like it says, you can't let just the evil in society just not be restrained, right? The evil that needs to be restrained, that needs to be controlled, so we need to have these rules. But not in this horrible way, right? In this malice way of being physically violent or anything like that. And so again, right, we need to progress, we need to learn from our mistakes. So yeah, punishments are necessary, but not these cruel punishments, right? Not doing things just out of evil. And again, that's why I say be important. Do not judge others if you do not wish to be judged. We should take that literally, because, okay, were you going to judge her and throw stones? What if we do something? Do we want people to throw stones at us? No, we want someone to say, okay, you might go to jail, but you're not going to be physically, right, hurt with stones. Then it continues. It is not possible that Jesus could have prohibited the overthrowing of evil, seeing that he gives examples of having done just that himself, in no uncertain terms. What he wishes to say was that the right to censor is to be found in the moral authority of the one who censors. To become guilty of that which one is condemning in another person is to renounce this authority, so depriving oneself of the right to restrain. Furthermore, our inner conscience denies respect and voluntary submission to any person who, having been invested with some kind of authority, violates the laws and principles which they were put in charge. There is no legitimate authority in the eyes of God, but that based on the example of the goodness it offers. Likewise, this is what is emphasized by the words of Jesus. So, again, saying, even if these people that brought the girl to Jesus, right, even if they were the authority, even if they were, that was their job, right, to condemn these people, it's up to them, right, how evil they're going to be or what goodness they're going to have. So, even in that situation, right, because we know that in the end, God is above all, right? God is the real one that's in charge. So we're not really in charge, right? No one has real authority. So it's just what we're doing with that, right? If we're letting that power get to our head, or if we're having that authority, taking it seriously, right? But also with goodness. And now we're on to the next section, which is instructions from the spirits. The pardon of offenses. How many times must I forgive my brother and sister? Not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Here we have the teaching of Jesus, which should most strike the intelligence and speak most loudly to our hearts. If these words of mercy are compared with the prayer he taught to his disciples, that prayer so simple, so concise, yet so great in its aspiration, would you always encounter the same thought? Jesus, you preeminently just one, replies to Peter with these words. You must forgive without limit. You must forgive each offense that as many times as it is done to you. Your brothers and sisters on earth must be taught that it is forgetfulness of self that makes a person invulnerable to attack, misbehaviors, and insults. Your heart must be mild and humble, without measuring out your gentleness. In short, you do whatever you wish the Celestial Father to do for you. Is he not frequently forgiving you? Have you, by any chance, counted how many times his pardon has come down to erase your shortcomings? So, right, so let's just stop there, right? How many times has God forgiven us, right? All the time we make mistakes and God forgives us. So now what right do we have to be hard on these people who make mistakes, right? When even God forgives us. God forgives us, God's going to forgive that person, but we're going to be hard on them, right? That doesn't make sense. So pay attention to the reply given by Jesus, and just as Peter did, apply it to yourself. Forgive freely, use your indulgence, be charitable and generous, and even be lavish with your love. Give, and the Lord will make restitution. Forgive, and the Lord will forgive you. Lower yourself, and the Lord will raise you up. Humble yourself, and the Lord will take you to sit on his right hand. So, right, again, that sums it up right there, right? There's so much in that little paragraph. So, again, right, like we've been talking about, listen, pay attention to what was said by Jesus, but now apply it to our lives, right? Because one thing to talk about it, right? We can talk about it all we want, but in the next minute, if we go and judge someone, we didn't make any progress, right? We didn't do anything. So applying that to ourselves, right? Forgive freely. Be charitable, be generous, right? Spread your love, because who are you to judge someone, right? Who are you to hold a grudge against someone, to not forgive someone, if even God is forgiving that person? Right? Lower yourself, humble yourself, and God will raise you up, right? If you don't have to be prideful, you don't have to be top, you don't have to be the authority, right? You just have to be humble and compassionate and sharing your love, and that is what will get you raised up. Dearly beloved, go forth to study and comment on these words which I have spoken on the part of He who, from the highest of celestial splendors, is always watching over you. Proceed lovingly in the thankless task that began 18 centuries ago. Forgive your fellow men as you would wish them to forgive you. If their acts cause you personal harm, then this is just one more motive for your indulgence, since the merit for forgiveness is in proportion to the seriousness of the wrongdoing. You will gain no merit by overlooking the errors of your fellow men if they are not more than just simple scratches. So, they're saying here, even when someone does something really horrible towards you, forgive them, because it's almost the more serious this fault is, like this mistake is, you're forgiving them means so much more. So if someone accidentally steps on your shoe, and you say, oh, okay, and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, and you say, oh, it's fine, that one's not going to have much merit, because that was just a little thing, right? That's not really, you shouldn't be getting mad over that. That's not actually a big mistake. It's fine. But if someone took your car and then crashed it, right? That's a big mistake that's affecting you now, right? A lot of things are gonna go wrong. But if you forgive that person, right, that's a lot more meritful, because, okay, that person really did something wrong. It really affected you, but you still have that kindness to forgive that person. So there's gonna be situations that's a lot harder to forgive people, but those situations are gonna count so much more when we forgive that person. Spiritists never forget that the pardoning of wrongdoings must not be an empty expression, be this either by word or by action. Since you call yourself Spiritists, then be so with all fervor. Forgive all evil that has been done to you, and think nothing save one thing, the good that you can do. Those who follow this path must not stray from it, even in thought, which is known to God, seeing that each one is responsible for their thoughts. Take care, therefore, to expulge from yourself all rancor sentiment. God knows what remains at the bottom of the heart of each one of his children. So happy is he who can sleep at night saying, I have nothing against my neighbor. Simon Bordock's 1862. So, again, right, even one thing we judge people verbally, right, and we say it to a lot of people, but even judging people just in our thoughts, right, even that is not hidden from God, right? God knows our thoughts. So past that, right, past just saying it out loud, but also our thoughts, just change that. And it says, he who sleeps happily at night, right, who sleeps peacefully, can say, I have nothing against my neighbor. Because, right, when we have something against someone, that boils in us and that eats us alive, right? It keeps us up, it keeps us angry, it keeps us anxious. But if we let go of that, we'll be peaceful, right? And there's no reason, right? It's hurting ourselves more to keep that anger and not forgive that person than to just forgive them and move on. So that's where we'll leave off today, and next week we'll continue with that section about the instructions from the spirits, right? How we apply that to our lives. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, December 17th. Dealing with fortune. Has fortune dealt you some bad cards? Then let wisdom make you a good gamester. One person with a history of bad luck still finds ways to succeed, while another in a similar situation manages only a long, sad story about why success is impossible. The difference between the two is what they make of what they have. Some of us may have to work twice as hard as others to accomplish the same things. Is this fair? No, but rather than wasting our energy by complaining, why not try to figure out how to get what we want in spite of the lack of fairness? When the odds are stacked against me, even though I've done nothing to deserve my bad luck, I won't let myself feel frustrated. Instead, I'll figure out what I need to do to beat the odds. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about at all, feel free to email me at kardecradioforteens@gmail.com and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.